What's up, guys? Welcome into a Week 18 edition of Chargers Weekly. Alongside Matt Money Smith, Chris Hayre here with you. Money, Raiders, Chargers, Vegas. Winner goes to playoffs. What more do you need to say, man?
I mean, how about it? The Chargers and the Raiders going to play two primetime games, a Monday night and a Sunday night. That's how big it is and how big of a deal this one is. It's the last game of the regular season, and it is the only one that is a win, and you are in, lose, and you are not. And it's the two teams that hate each other more than any other teams in the league, two fan bases that hate each other more than any other fan bases in the league, and it's going to be awesome. It is going to be absolutely awesome, and I cannot wait to get into Allegiant Stadium on Sunday night. And having seen a lot of those Raider home games and having been on the road and seen a nice chunk of Charger fans in Houston, in Washington, in Denver, and all these places that we've gone, I think we're going to have a nice EPL Premier League style swath of powder blue inside of I just think when the Raiders were 6-7 and it wasn't looking good, they went through that 1-5 stretch. I could totally see a bunch of Charger fans scooping up tickets, and we're going to get a healthy little sliver of Charger fans out there, and it's going to make that place electric. It's going to be great.
It's going to be so electric, and we got a jam-packed show. We're going to talk to Shawne Merriman. We're going to talk to Jac Collinsworth of NBC Sports, and we're going to talk to Steve Wyche of NFL Network. So three great guests. Before we get into money, just let's rewind a little bit to the Broncos game. It was a get-right game for the Chargers in all three phases.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what they needed, because it was a pretty crushing loss in Houston in all three phases. You know, for the most, I shouldn't say all three phases. Special teams was fine, but offense, defense was not. So I think, you want to have some momentum and not just get a win. And I've said that this year is that there's no such thing as winning, or I should say there's no such thing as style points. Wins have just been weird and hard to come by for so many teams this year. Just get the win. But I do think in this particular case, because of how the Houston game played out, that this was look, they got Drew Lock out there. They're missing, guys like Bradley Chubb, and a lot of their defense is gone. The Chargers got everybody back. Go out there and put a whooping on them. And it was good to see. It was good to see the defense get after it. It was great to see the offense light up the scoreboard, a nice fourth down conversion that led to a touchdown. Like, there was a lot of good that came out of that game.
Yeah, the Andre Roberts 101-yard kickoff return, which was awesome. And he said, too, getting guys back from that COVID list on special teams, that makes a world of difference as well. Hopkins kicking the ball well. And, I look at the defense, and we're finally starting to see them healthy, right? Asante Samuel Jr., his first game back was Houston, so he's got a couple games under his belt now. Finally see Derwin out there. Derwin just makes a world of difference, man.
Incredible.
It's incredible the way he plays. If you haven't seen the mic'd up, watch the mic'd up. I mean, if you don't want to run through a brick wall after seeing how he leads the team, he's telling every single person on the team he loves them.
I love you, bro.
Multiple times throughout the game, man. And he's amping people up. Justin Jones is like, amp me up 33. That's what they were missing. And we didn't see it in the Kansas City game because he wasn't right. We didn't see it in the Giants game. They didn't need him. They certainly needed him in Houston, and they needed a lot of those guys in Houston, Money. And it almost made me feel a little bit better about what happened on the 26th when I saw Mike Williams' 45-yard touchdown, what Derwin was able to do, getting all these guys back healthy. What the potential is of this team, and can they just have that maximum potential show up Sunday night at Allegiant Stadium?
Yeah, I'll tell you, this is something that was probably overlooked, and understandably, like you said, you get Eckler back, he gets a touchdown. You get Mike Williams back, there's your shot play for a touchdown. You get Joey Bosa back, he's in the backfield. He makes that huge play on the Philly special to stop Drew Lock from getting into the end zone. So I know this was overlooked because not a lot of people talked about it, but to me, it is a huge deal. Trey Pipkins played fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people knew that he started at right tackle because Storm was activated, but they just opted to put Pipkins out there. And what that tells me is, Houston was a disaster. But there were so many guys out on that field that we did not expect to see out on that field. In this game, when they had to fill a hole at right tackle, it was filled, and the defense was whole, and Derwin was everywhere. So I just want to make sure I tip a cap to a guy that's taken a ton of incoming for probably not being part of this team once his rookie deal expires. When there was some excitement about his upside, he just needed time to develop, that all the traits were there, and maybe this coaching staff with those traits is able to build a heck of a right tackle out of Trey Pipkins. And if that's the case, fantastic. Moving forward, you get your depth with Trey and Storm, moving forward, because I don't know what Bulaga is going to look like moving forward. I think after missing the entire season, I can't imagine him coming back. So that out of the way. The second thing I'll bring up with your listen to the mic'd up on Derwin James is you need to have, in games like this against the Raiders and a game like that against the Broncos where you had to have it, you need someone that won't let you lose. You have to find that play. Hey, this guy is not going to let us lose this game. There's just, it's not an option for him. And he will do everything in his power to make sure that you're on your P's and Q's and he is, and that they don't lose a game they're supposed to win. And man, having him out there, especially with news that Darren Waller's back at practice and might be back, like that is, you can't oversell it, how important it is having him out on that field, because he's truly the one guy. Now, Justin Herbert's the one that's going to make the most impact of anyone on the field in terms of touching the ball every single time they're on offense. But man, Derwin's a close second. And the confidence level I have in this team, it's probably a 300 to 400% multiplier when that guy's out there.
There's no question about it. And Money, before we get into all of our guests, I just want to say this: the Chargers-Raiders rivalry is back, and the fact that there are so many former Chargers on the other side, it just makes it even juicier, right? Denzel Perryman and Casey Hayward and Gus Bradley,
Philon, Bradley,
Square, Teamer, Faison. I mean, so many guys who played on this team last year, and it matters again. Like the Shawne Merriman, Nick Hardwick era, they bulldozed the Raiders every time they played them. This one matters. They're both above 500, and it's for a playoff spot. We haven't seen this out of this rivalry in almost 4 decades.
Yeah, and look, the Chargers were en route to a boat race when they met on Monday Night Football, right? It was 21-0 in the first half, and then it got a little shaky there in the third quarter, and that's where I think, a little bit of that unease comes in with Charger fans or people around the Chargers. Like, hey, let's not forget, you probably should have put this team away with like a 35-7 or a 42-7 style route. And it just got shaky in the third quarter, and that's, I think it's important to remember that. I think that's probably better for them than saying, whatever with the Raiders. They won these last 3 games with 7 turnovers against teams that were totally decimated by COVID every step of the way, or by injury. The Cleveland game was a farce. And then the Broncos game, there's no Teddy Bridgewater. A lot of their defense is banged up. And then they get a Colts team that clearly Carson Wentz just did not look right. Now, I'm not trying to take away those 3 wins from them. They won. You got to win the game. Look, both the Texans were worse off from COVID, you can make a case, than the Chargers were, and the Chargers still lost that game. So I'm not taking anything away from that, but I think you can kind of talk away the Raiders' success if you wanted to. But because these 2 teams already met once this year when they were both pretty much full strength, and we know that it could have been a Chargers route and it wasn't, because the Raiders, they're fighters. They do not go away. They're cockroaches, man. They're hard to kill. So, I think that's good for this team to remember, to kind of have that seed planted of how that Monday nighter went in I think it was week 5.
So much to break down on this one. Shawne Merriman, Jac Collinsworth, but first, NFL Network, Steve Wyche. All right, before we get to Steve, a quick note to let you know that Pepsi, they're passing out the ultimate Chargers fan experience only at 7-Eleven. Rush in, scan the code for your chance to win some awesome Chargers prizes. Bolt up with Pepsi. No purchase necessary, must be 18 years or older. Sponsor is PepsiCo. For official rules, visit boltupla.com/7-Eleven. Also want to tell you guys about picks for Popeyes. Every Chargers game this season, when the Bolts defense gets an interception, show the game recap email to your local Popeyes to get a free chicken sandwich when you purchase a chicken sandwich at regular menu price. All right, buddy, let's bring him in. Your NFL Network teammate, the great Steve Wyche. And Steve, I immediately think of you when I think of big games, man. We wanted to have you on. Chargers Raiders, last game of the regular season in week 18 for a playoff spot, my friend.
Ooh, we got some hot sauce on this money. This is like the jerk seasoning on top of some nice jerk chicken. I mean, last game of the regular season, two teams that really just love each other. I mean, they're just, they wrap their arms around each other and embrace all the love between the two franchises. I mean, and win it in. I mean, what a great scenario for two teams. Different points of the season. We didn't think the Raiders would even have a shot. We thought the Chargers were going to roll right into this. And now they're at this point. I love it. I mean, talk about drama. We're here.
Steve, what would you say, as you're based out here on the West Coast, you've covered a ton of Charger games, ton of Raider games this year. Do you feel like you have a beat on one of these teams better than the other? I can't figure out the 3 wins in a row for the Raiders when they turn the ball over 7 times and have 0 takeaways. And I can't figure out the Chargers losing to the Texans. It's hard to figure these two teams out.
The Chargers drive me crazy. Just in terms of, I look at the talent, I look at the coaching, and, I think, frankly, they should be in contention to be winning the division. I mean, I know how it is, but I mean, you look at some of the games they lost, are they going to be able to graduate to that next step? And that's what you're saying in this game. Like, if they don't win this game, like, to me, there's no reason that they don't win this game, right? And they don't win it, you're just saying to yourself, like, man, what is it going to take for this team to get through? I mean, is it the clutch mental moment? We talk every year, every year the team's like, oh, they're close. They're going to get there next year. Tomorrow is not promised. Ask the Cleveland Browns that right now.
Yeah.
Right. You think you're right there. If you don't take advantage of the moment, it may never come back. And that's how I feel about the Chargers. Like, if they get through, if they make the playoffs, why can't they come out of the AFC? I mean, tell me where the weakness is personnel wise. Tell me the weakness is coaching wise. Other than a lack of experience in the big moment, I don't see it. And then we look at the Raiders, you're like, everything that's happened to them, they have bucked every analytic. They have bucked every common sense thing, right? The John Gruden situation, everything that went on with Damon Arnett and Henry Ruggs. This team should not be here. Like you just mentioned, money, 7 giveaways, 0 takeaways, and they've won 3 straight. Now, the thing is, it comes down to this. If the Raiders can bog you down, right, like they did with the Colts last week, all right, and I'm not even counting their previous 2 wins because they played a Browns team with Mullins at quarterback, their 4th quarterback. They came back and played Drew Lock against the Broncos, and they managed to grind those games out. But if they can muck this game up and get you in the final 5 minutes where they're within a 1 possession, this is not the type of game the Chargers want to be in because somehow Derek Carr and this team has managed to make the plays down the stretch to win.
Steve, you mentioned the Chargers getting over the hump, and I go back a few weeks ago, that Thursday night game against the Chiefs. If they win that game, they're in first place in the West, and then you go to Houston knowing that you win out, you're going to have a home game in the playoffs. It took like 1 or 2 plays in that game to kind of flip it. We're seeing them get healthy now. Obviously, I don't put a ton of stock in how they beat the Broncos with Drew Lock at quarterback and the injuries and the COVID issues that the Broncos had. But I just feel like when this defense specifically, when Derwin James is on the football field,
correct,
that defense is different. And I don't know if you saw his mic'd up, but I almost feel like it's impossible for them to lose when he is playing the way he played last Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, you would think so. Again, because you look at some teams and there's a piece. We know Derwin is that star, that chess piece, right? Where they can move free, strong, outside linebacker tendencies in the slot, different things like that. And that makes other players, you can design your defense right differently with the other 10. And so you say that, again, you look at the Raiders and you say that, like, who's their threat? Okay, now, I will say this. They might be getting Darren Waller back. If they get Darren Waller back, all right, guys, we know what he is. He is a wide receiver in a tight end's body and a tight end playing wide receiver. You have got to change what you do schematically if he is on the field. And that can open up some things for the Raiders offense. And that's a big situation right there if Waller comes back. But, again, who else on that Raiders team really scares you? I mean, I know Josh Jacobs, but he hasn't popped one, right? He's kind of now this season been like a 3-yard in a cloud of dust guy.
Steve, Derwin mentioned Renfro and the way that Renfro's played specifically since Thanksgiving. He said that that's the guy that they're really going to have to account for in the slot.
They have to.
Yeah.
They have to, because you see what teams try to do to him. They roll everything towards him. They double him, whatever. He's like Cooper Kupp. He's open.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter.
You're not seeing him making contested grabs over people. He's open. So he's got something going with Carr right now where you might even have to say, okay, if we can limit Renfro from having the big play, right? If you can keep him to that 9 yards, keep everything underneath, which the Chargers do well. They don't allow a ton of explosives, right? So if you do that and you somehow limit the explosives with Waller, you've got a shot. You got a shot only if you put points on the board. And that's where the Chargers are like every time I see Austin Eckler's getting to the end zone, but then something's like, how come you guys aren't putting 30 up like every game? Because the capability is there.
Yeah. Steve, would love to know, do you put stock into the Justin Herbert primetime numbers? The fact that I think outside of Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes, he's had, this will be his 6th primetime game, and the numbers are crazy. It's like 14 touchdowns. I think maybe 1 pick and a rating of like 125. Like, do you think there's something to that when you see those numbers for these big games?
If it were the NBA or something, I'd put more into it, because you've only got 4 other people to account for, and one player you can say, look, these people rise up like this, and he may rise up to these occasions. Is everybody else going to come along with him? Again, these are the moments. This is a big game. There's primetime games, right? And then there are moments. And this is the moment. This is where, okay, this dude, this is kind of where he can make his bread. If he wins this game and he plays well in this game, then Justin Herbert, that top 5 talk is legit. He got his team into the playoffs under these types of circumstances. So I do put some stock into the fact that some players play well. I mean, I go back to college and I look at the big games and I'm like, this guy's the best player on the field. Like, so, I look at that. There's some guys who just have something about them in that moment. So for him personally, yes, I do put stock into it. Now you've got 10 other guys who are on the field with him. Are they going to rise up? Because that's what matters most in a game like this.
Steve, you covered the league for a long time. How great is this for the NFL to have the Chargers and Raiders both good? Week 4, Monday Night Football, that was the first game since 2002 that both teams entered the game above 500. This will be the second time. And we talk about all these storylines, former Chargers on the Raiders, and the way that Week 4 ended with Bosa and Derek Carr. I mean, how good is this for the NFL?
It's huge. Look, I mean, no slight to the Chargers, but we all know that silver and black brand is significant, in terms of national and international appeal. And then if the Chargers can do something to elevate themselves, we've seen. I mean, look, I go back, to the Super Bowl year, to the Stan Humphrey Super Bowl run. I mean, the way people jumped on the Chargers bandwagon when you had Natron Means and Alfred Papunu and all those guys. So, then the LT years, it's just been so sporadic, and them not being able to get past the Colts and the Patriots. So to have both of these teams in a moment like this, where they've had to overcome so much, I think it's huge. I think it's absolutely huge. And also to have 2 West Coast teams duking it out like this. I mean, because again, the majority of the NFL fan base, I think, is Midwest and East Coast centric. Right. So to be able to do this in prime time with so much, on the line, I think is just great for the league. That's why they moved the game to where they moved it. They understand that.
It was a no-brainer. Steve, I know it's we're doing Chargers. It's a Chargers podcast, and I don't think anybody wants to hear too much Raider talk, but I am interested. I don't know why I'm so fascinated by Derek Carr, and I can't. It's hard for me to figure out how I feel about him. It's just there's something I can't describe it. Like, I don't know. By all accounts, he seems like a great guy, high character, someone that everybody should be rooting for, but I just can't put my finger on it. And it feels like a lot of people feel that way as well. And I don't know if it's the turnovers, if it's the throwing the ball away on 4th down, if it's things like that. But how big is this for him? Like, you can make a case he's the most polarizing quarterback in the NFL as to whether or not he's good or not, if they should keep him or not. Do you think this maybe dictates his future as a Raider, considering his current salary and contract situation?
Well, first off, Money, I think it's his hair. You just wish you could have that Mufasa set of locks that he's sporting right now.
Yeah.
But also, I'd put him probably number 4 on the most polarizing. I think Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield and probably Matt Ryan and maybe Kirk Cousins fit into those boxes as well. But with Derek, it's funny because like those teams I just mentioned, their quarterback, half the fan base will make this is why he's our guy. Like, look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. But other people will say, look at the big moments. Where's the signature moment? And I think, Derek, he doesn't have those consistent, it's like you hear in basketball. There's a guy who can take over a minute, but not take over sequences. And Derek has not taken over sequences like we've seen Justin Herbert do, right? Like where he's just rolling. You're like, okay, we're good. And Derek is real hot and cold like that. But man, in late games, the dude is like automatic. I think he's got 28 fourth quarter
29.
29, fourth quarter overtime game-winning drives. And we've seen him do that lately. They've got 3 overtime wins this year. So I just think, he's not Aaron Rodgers, right? He's not the dude who's just going to pull a rabbit out of a hat. And you're like, oh my God, there's nothing we could do. Like he hasn't had that moment basically since he's gotten hurt when he was on that great MVP type run a couple of years ago.
Yeah. 16.
And so, so you say to yourself, because this is the thing with the Raiders, it's so funny. People are like, hey, if Rich Bisaccia, if they win this game, this dude's got to get some coach of the year conversation. Well, if they lose this game, he's going to get fired.
Right.
And I think that's how people are with Derek. Like if they win this game, okay, this is Derek's moment. If they lose this game, they got to get rid of him and start all over. And it's such a weird dynamic when you know that Derek Carr is a good player. I mean, just and I'm not taking away from any of Derek's coaches, but can you imagine if all of a sudden he goes to New Orleans? Tell me one person that's going to say if Derek Carr goes to Sean Payton, he's not going to think he's going to be a Pro Bowl type player.
Yeah.
So the talent is there, but like you said, there's this right here. Like, is he ever going to be the guy to get them going? You just don't know.
Steve, we'll get you out of here on this. Knowing what you know about both these teams, how they're currently playing, what do you think is going to decide this one Sunday night?
I mean, to me, it's just the Chargers getting out early and not letting the Raiders bog them down. I mean, we saw the Colts get out early on the Raiders, and then the Raiders bog them down, right? You can't get that 10-0 lead, then all of a sudden it's 10-3 at halftime.
Yeah. Or
13-7 midway through the third quarter, because then you're in trouble. Then the Raiders kind of have you where they want you. And it's weird because the Raiders make the penalties that they've always done. They do the things that they've kind of traditionally done, but they find themselves able to make you make that one mistake or have that one bad 3 and out, which gives them a shot. And so I think the Chargers have got to just, if they're going to get up by a touchdown, they got to stay up by a touchdown, extend it to 10, get a take away a possession, just not let the Raiders keep it within a 1-possession game, because they just somehow this season, and it's not just the last 3 games, but this season, when you look at their games, been able to find a way to win those type of ball games.
God, I can't wait.
Steve, it's going to be so good.
It's going to be awesome.
So good.
It's going to be so good, man. I know how busy you are. We appreciate you taking a few minutes to chat with us about this game, man.
Always great, guys.
Uptown Top Rank. That's our man, Steve Wyche.
Money, this is Las Vegas's #1 resident, Raider lover, Shawne Merriman.
He's been having a week now on social
Sean,
media.
You've had some fun
Sean's been having
already,
a week
bro.
now on social media.
It's been fun. I can't lie about that. But look, this is the week for me, just that rivalry that's been around for so long. Now you get a chance to go back and forth, and I'm not playing obviously, but you see the rabid fans and how aggressive and the back and forth banter that they have all the time. I mean, I just wish that I was on social media more like this when I was playing, because it would have been no stopping me then.
Speak to that, Shawne, because we know fans get excited, right? Fan bases, they're not the ones that got to put on the pads and get out on the field and hit each other and play this game that is so violent and is so hard to do anything against any team, let alone one that's supposedly a rival. But man, it feels like it's different, even for the players. I think about last year, the win and the Raiders, when Parham dropped that ball and it was announced, they're doing their little airplane on the Chargers sideline. When Herbert's in overtime, Chargers doing the same thing back. So do players, is there a rivalry between these two teams for the players as well?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, outside of it being a division game, I think that we all know that there's a different level of play when you're playing the Raiders. Yeah, you want to see, as a player in the locker room, I'm sure Coach Staley is probably telling them this is a game that we got to win and treat this like every other game. You should say it in the locker room, but amongst the guys, when you're talking, that this is a little different, right? The guy's going to be jumping and diving for that extra inch, and guys are going to be finishing off plays. This week is different than a lot of the others. It really is, and even more so because of the implications. If this is a game and we're in the middle of the season and not much is riding on the line other than just a game on Sunday, then it's one thing. But this is a win or go home. This is who's going to kind of be looked at and control the outside of Kansas City. Who's going to be that rivalry going forward, and it has a lot of implications.
Shawne, I talked to Nick Hardwick yesterday about Raider Week and what it means, and that's why I think it's so special, because it means so much to you guys. I don't know if you just talk about the fact that Marty Schottenheimer really ratcheted this thing up when he was the head coach.
He did. And don't get me wrong. I mean, look, I went hard against every team, but it was something about Marty where he implemented this idea in us that this team deserves to be hated just that much more than everybody else. And when I tell you that those week of practices were more physical than we had all season, I mean, we had to talk guys in not to take each other to the ground on tackles. We were lining up on 4th and goal, and the guys wasn't fudding. They were, taking guys to the ground. And so when the temperament is that high and that much on the line, and you just can't wait to get to the game, because all week you're fired up to go hit somebody else, and what better way to hit and team to hit than the Raiders.
Yeah, it's interesting, Shawne, because Joey Bosa didn't hold his tongue when he was talking about it after that first game. He's like, hey, look, we know how this goes. You get the car early and he gets shook. And that's just, and you don't hear that a lot. But if you could, as playing, the same position as Joey and knowing what it means to get after a quarterback, just kind of speak to what he was trying to convey there in that moment.
Well, for one thing I've been loving about Joey is he's been talking, even, when Drew Lock it came out and said he was tired. He wanted to go make that big play. And he says, like, that part, I think that, first of all, Joey Bosa, he's a great player. He is. I think that the only thing that I would say about him is I wish he was always a little bit more vocal, because he holds so much pull, and he has so much respect in that team. So when he talks and he gets vocal, people will listen. It'll lift people up. So to actually see him going out and saying these things, and, not only because he's a confident player, but he can actually go out and do it.
Speaking of vocal, Derwin James, it looks like that defense finally is getting healthy and kind of rounding the corner going into week 18. What did you see from the Chargers defense last Sunday that you think can hopefully carry over into this Sunday night?
One thing I always said about Derwin, and people, it's easy to talk about his physical attributes, what he can do on the field, and him being, imposing other people. His presence will disrupt any offense. You got to look at where he is. The guy plays 4 or 5 different positions. But people don't give him enough credit for him communicating and keeping that defense cohesive. And when you have somebody out there that's constantly talking to guys, getting them lined up, sometimes you don't hear the play because they may be loud, and he would physically go and take a guy and get him lined up, make sure that he knows a call so his head is not spinning around before the play. Those type of guys are invaluable. It's invaluable to a defense because you in a sense, you have a coach that's out there, and also a guy that can go out and make plays. And there's very few times, sometimes you play with guys, they're very vocal, but, they might not be the greatest athlete or the greatest player on offense or defense. But when you have someone that can do both, that's what makes the, great players.
Shawne, I'm pulling it up right now and just getting a look at that Raiders offensive line that's struggled this year. Can you share with us and the listeners the idea of moving around, finding Waldo, and when you have someone like Joey Bosa, what kind of challenge is that for you, a pass rusher, when you're asked to maybe line up inside or move to the other side? Are those challenges, or how does that work?
Yeah, as a pass rusher, you love it, and I'll tell you why. Because Joey's going to get and has been getting so much attention. They're going to slide protection, whatever he is. He's going to make sure they stay away or cut him off from the backside and make sure he doesn't make any plays. Now, when you start to move him around and put him in different positions, they can no longer come out and say, hey, this guy's going to be lined up on the left. He's going to be lined up on the right. I mean, Joey, you can line up on the inside and he can rush from the guard if he had to. He just has that type of ability. So to keep him moving around is very smart. And coming into these games like this, you want to find out where Joey Bosa is at every single point, because then you force somebody else, some of the other guys to step up, Nwosu and coming off the edge. You want these other guys to step up, because if that happens, if you have another guy on the opposite side that also requires any type of attention that can make the play, when Joey's going to, be double teamed, or they're going to fan protection, the slide protect to him, it's a game changer.
Shawne, we're going to be there in a few days. You've been there, you live there.
Yeah.
What's the buzz right now in the city as we get closer to Sunday night?
Well, look, whenever I have problems getting tickets, that's a big deal. But that's the kind of the feel that's going on out here. I don't know a person that's not going to that game, and there's somebody that hasn't been to a game all year that's finding their way to making the game. And don't be surprised. I'll say this: do not be surprised if it's 50-50 out there. I'm not joking.
What he said. Yeah.
I'll tell you, there's a lot living here in Vegas. There's a lot of Chargers fans walking around. You see your silver and black, you're going to have that. But for the most part, you have a lot of Chargers fans walking around here in Vegas. And don't be surprised if you see a 50-50 crowd out there.
Now, would love to know, last thing from me here, Shawne, we see the lights out extreme fighting. You mentioned Marty would ratchet up the practices for Raider Week for you, and watching what you've been doing on social media. What are the workouts been like this week? You hitting a little harder? You tackling a little harder?
Look, 2 days. Look at my Instagram yesterday and watch the morning workout at 7:30 in the morning, then watch the afternoon, the evening workout. I've been hitting 2 days this week, but I'm in the spirit. I like when this happens, and for me, being on this side now, stepping away from the game, you start to understand and feel how fans feel about the game, right? Because they can't go out there and make a big play. They can't tackle anybody, do anything. So the most you can do is go at another team's fans, and that's your rivalry. That's your game. I think that I think the Chargers are definitely going to come out on top. I do believe that the Raiders are going to put up a fight for a quarter or two. But I just feel that the way Justin Herbert and these guys are playing as a cohesive unit right now, that they're going to overwhelm them before that game is over.
Shawne, final thing, lights out extreme fighting. What's the latest? What do you got cooking right now?
The funny part is we were supposed to have a fight this Friday out here. And I was going to make it a very, very rivalry special for lights out extreme fighting. We couldn't pull it off. We couldn't get the dates in time. But all of our fights are still there on Football Sports, Football TV. Check us out. And we do have some big announcements coming up and some more dates outside of California as well, and some big tournaments we're looking at putting on.
There we go. Maybe we can get you in Kansas City or Tennessee or Cincinnati or wherever we are for that first playoff game. We'll set up a lights out on Friday night going into that playoff contest.
There you go.
We'll make it happen. Shawne, we will see you at Allegiant on Sunday, my man.
All right. Can't wait.
All right, buddy, let's bring in Jac Collinsworth. Jack, when did you find out Chargers, Raiders, and did you have an inkling that this would be the destination here in Week 18?
It's kind of funny because we have all those vans, we're sitting all the production trucks, and we have our own little sort of corner of the trailer where we have the TVs and we watch all the games on Sunday, and everybody's watching all the different matchups going, well, if this happens, then we're in Cleveland. If that happens, we're in Vegas. And I got to say, probably the most popular was a trip to Vegas, and we got exactly that.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, look, you've seen both of these teams already this year. Just kind of your thoughts, Jack, on what you saw Sunday Night Football, Chargers, Steelers. I mean, it was an awesome game. Looked like it was going to be a blowout, but it never is with the Chargers. And just sort of your impressions of where we're at now with this team at 9-7 and fighting for a playoff spot with its final contest.
I don't think the future's bright, right? Not many, you don't want to trade places with many other teams, many other quarterback situations. And I'm in Cincinnati right now. We were just talking about that. And I see a whole bunch of parallels between the Bengals and where the Chargers are. And it's a young quarterback, and you'll have those multi-interception games and tough moments, and you're going to go up and you're going to go down, and it's never going to be the perfect smooth sailing. And it's not even that for Tom Brady. Right. But he's a little more consistent. Aaron Rodgers, you get a little more consistency. Just think you hit a little of those learning curves, but there's no quarterback that I would trade for Joe Burrow. And if I were you guys, there'd be no quarterback that I would trade for Justin Herbert. So you just kind of live with it and learn with it and grow with them. But I think both these guys are ahead of schedule, man. I really do. Like, I think the Bengals are going to put together a potential playoff run here, and one game away for the Chargers to go do the same.
What do you make of the Chargers right now, Jack, this late in the year? Obviously, with these COVID issues, a lot of teams had some difficulties at the end of the year, and the Chargers' difficulty was in Houston right after Christmas, losing that game to the Texans, but appear to be full strength now. Justin Herbert humming, and, we've been talking about Derwin James all podcasts and just the impact that he has on the defensive end.
He's pretty amazing. Derwin James is pretty amazing. And I think you got to saw a little bit of his leadership stuff last week too. I was watching that mic'd up, and the relationship that he has with coach, I thought was pretty cool. And I know a bunch of those guys. I know Bosa, and you got some Notre Damers there as well. Drew Tranquil, who was basically a strong safety, and he had all kinds of knee injuries, man. At least 2 or 3, I think one in high school, maybe 2 at college, one of them even when he was celebrating. And he's sort of that converted safety, now linebacker, as you see that position evolve. Jerry Tillery's another one. I saw he had a sack last week. I can remember Jerry Tillery coming into Notre Dame when we were there, and the very first practice as an early enrollee, Brian Kelly being like, who the heck is that guy? And he played a bunch all 4 years. And so to finally see his career sort of come back around, and I think he's being productive now too, has been very cool for me to watch. But I think this team's got a great offensive line. Austin Eckler creates that natural leverage. He's one of the hardest backs to bring down anywhere in football that I watch. And then you have 2 of the best receivers in Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Finally getting to see them have a quarterback throw them the football like Justin Herbert's pretty dang exciting. So I think this team's got basically everything, and they can go compete with Kansas City. We've already seen that. So if you can go beat them, I don't think there's any reason to think they can't get out of the AFC if they get hot at the right time.
You know what? Just keep running with that, Jack, because you've seen all these teams. I mean, like when you look at the AFC, do you feel like there's a favorite? Is there a team that you feel has distanced itself when you look at the top?
You still feel like Kansas City's probably that best team. Like any given week, if there was, I still feel like they're going to be the favorite. Now Tennessee, if they get Derrick Henry back, that's a physical group, and I feel like they always get overlooked a bit. And I don't really know why or how that they get overlooked, but Ryan Tannehill has really been a good quarterback there, and he knows how to play within that offense. And they play hard for Vrabel, and if they're running well without Derrick Henry. So if Derrick Henry comes back, I mean, he very well may have gone for 2,000 plus this year. He was on some crazy tear before he got hurt. And I also think about fresh legs, right? With all these other guys who have played 18 weeks, if he comes back and he's healthy and fresh, that could be a scary sight. So that's another team, but I've seen Coach Staley game plan for Kansas City, and those are some good game plans. And he makes them go, 20 throws to get the ball down the field. And I think that's the formula. I mean, the Bengals just somehow beat the Chiefs just going out duel mode with Patrick Mahomes. And you don't see that strategy work often, but Joe Burrow was able to overcome it. I think the Chargers have a much better defensive formula than I've seen most teams, and especially the Bengals just had.
Jack, it'll be my first time to Allegiant. Money, have you been to Allegiant Stadium?
No, we were shut out last year. Remember, we couldn't go.
Yeah, we couldn't go last year. So this will be our first time. I know you've been there when it's a packed house. Just describe the atmosphere and then what you're anticipating Sunday night, especially.
It's a very different atmosphere. I'll be honest with you. And we've been to all of them, man. We were in SoFi a handful of times. Hopefully be back out there in your guys' homeland come Super Bowl time. We'll see what happens with all of that.
Yeah.
But just the environment there was very interesting because I thought you had fans from everywhere, and you definitely have Vegas fans, but there was it was a Chiefs game that we were there for. You had a whole lot of Chiefs fans too. And then you had people who were there just to place bets, right? Who just had a betting interest. And it's got a really cool feel pulling up to it because it's the all black stadium. You're like, what the heck am I even pulling into? And then when you get inside of it, they close these black curtains so that you just see the field. And I don't know. It's a very different feeling dome than any of them. It doesn't feel like Lucas Oil. It doesn't feel like the Minnesota. It doesn't feel like SoFi. It's got its own identity. And honestly, in a lot of ways, it's perfect feeling for Vegas. It's perfect feeling for Vegas. And that outdoor set that we have there, it gets crazy with all the people walking off the strip. So it's one of our favorite places to go.
How surprised are you that we're here right now, Jack, that it comes down to Raiders and Chargers? I mean, there were so many of us that thought, man, we might see 4 teams from the AFC North, just kind of the way the season played out, that the Raiders were able to figure out a way to just thread that needle and get here to where we are in week 18.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lamar Jackson getting hurt probably helped the causes for both of those teams. Ben Roethlisberger sort of falling off in terms of just his game probably helped. And then Baker Mayfield just could not get healthy either. Yeah. I know he's taking all kinds of crap right now, but he was playing through a lot just trying to survive this season. I think he's a much better quarterback than he was, but there's definitely some surprise. Just the fact that the Raiders, with all that happened in Vegas this year, that they're in this position, I think you got to give a ton of credit to Derek Carr and, Crosby, some of the leadership on that team, Waller, just that they were able to battle to this point. And then, like we were talking about with LA, I'm not surprised at all by them. Like I really thought that they would be a win or two better than they are right now. And I think it just comes down to, you fast forward a year or 2 years in the career of Justin Herbert, he's not going to lose those games, but sometimes it just takes a bit of a learning curve. And I think we saw that. We saw that with Burrow. We saw that with Herbert. And that's why I see those similarities there.
Jack, what's this year been like for you, man? It's awesome because we always know when it's Sunday Night Football, it's the biggest game, it's the biggest stage. I remember seeing you after the game with Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen on the field with Snoop and Rodney.
Yeah.
Like, what has that experience been like to do that type of stuff?
Oh, it's crazy, man. It's as crazy as it looks. It is that crazy. I mean, we're hanging out in the tunnel there with Snoop, and that was that Chargers Steelers game. You start to get a lot of them mixed up, to be honest with you. But we're sitting there hanging out in the tunnel, and Snoop's a huge Steelers fan. And so Snoop's rooting like hell for the Steelers to win the game. And it looked like they were going to win the game for a long time. And then they hit the game winner down the sideline. You saw Snoop kind of melt. And then he has to go talk to the guys who just beat his Steelers. So there's been a lot of surreal moments, but you just try to live in them. And I just try to, I'm really good friends with Rodney, which I think helps because I could just, you know how it is. Whenever you're going through some crazy experiences, if you're doing it with a friend, it sort of helps to calm you down and just let you live in that moment. So I've sort of leaned on Rodney. And the cool thing is that all of these different cities and all of these memories, we get to share them collectively. And Big Showski, our researcher too. So we have stories to tell collectively, which makes it all fun.
The Sunday Night Football is a different deal, right? It's got the big intro. It's you're sitting around all day waiting for kick. Have you noticed, like Jack and covering it, have you noticed that certain players are just wired to perform at a certain level on Sunday night, and maybe others just something's not right and they don't play to the level you expect them to?
Absolutely. I mean, you can just feel, because we go down on the field, 2 segments before, so it's about 7:50 if we're an East Coast game. We're on the field, so you're seeing all these players warm up. There is just a different energy about it, right? We've all been to 1:00 games or 4:00 games, but when you're out there at 8:15, these guys know that all of their peers are watching, families, friends. You can just feel that. And also the buildings, right? I mean, there is a buzz, and a lot of times you'll have it where they roll some intro video or they shoot off fireworks. And every week I have chills before kickoff, and I'll take those moments, like even at Lambeau Field where we make our pick and we have this group that sort of walks us up the field. But I always just take a second and look around and just try to soak it in, because you almost can't believe some of these cities with the fireworks going off and the fans losing their minds, and Aaron Rodgers running onto the field, or Mahomes or whoever it is running onto the field. I live for that stuff, so I try not to let those moments get away.
Jack, we'll get you ahead of you on this. Just what do you think could decide this game on Sunday. The two rivals, they're both good again. And, the way that Justin has played in prime time, it's in the back of my mind for sure. The way that he's really stepped up and risen to the occasion.
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to those quarterbacks. I really do. And I got to make a pick. And we got a heated pick battle between Drew Brees and Tirico and all those guys. And it matters to us. And so I all week I've already been thinking about which way am I leaning with this? And it's hard. And, I think Carr has shown moments where he's clutch and that, he's a veteran and he's going to have that experience. He's going to have that clutch. He's going to be at home, and it's going to be a big game for his career. And I think he's going to feel that and shoulder a lot of that responsibility. And then you look at the other side of it, I think the Chargers are a little better team. And I think, Herbert has better wide receivers. I don't think anybody's really arguing that point. I really like Austin Eckler. I like their offensive line. I like Joey Bosa rushing. And when Joey Bosa turns it up to full speed, Joey Bosa can wreck a game, right? I mean, and I think we've seen him sort of turn it up to full speed. Derwin James is healthy. Casey Hayward. So I like a lot of the Chargers. And then it just comes down to, are you willing to bet on Justin Herbert's clutch gene against Carr's clutch gene? Because this is going to be one of those games that comes down to the fourth quarter. And can you go make that final drive? And I've been wrestling internally all week with, do I think Herbert can go make that final drive? And I really do feel like he can. What do you guys, man? You guys agree?
Yeah. I mean, for me, we talked about it a little bit before the pod, and I said, to me, it's defense. I feel like Herbert and the offense of the Chargers is going to be able to outclass that defense. It just feels like they have too much. And like we saw in that first game when they went up 21-0 and really just kind of stepped on their own tails a little bit and not making that thing a boat race. For me, it's defense. You said it. If Joey can turn this thing up, the O-line of the Raiders has been suspect all season. And to me, if that defensive front can get things going, I think that's what it's going to come down to. Because like you said, you don't want this thing to be close. The last thing you want is to plant that seed of believability in the Raiders. Because like you said, I mean, look, the guy's got 7 turnovers in the last 3 games, and yet they've won all 3 because they've been able to keep it close. It's just, it's such a weird team. And you know what? I know Chris said it was last one, Jack, but I do want to ask you, just because you mentioned Notre Dame a couple times, and we get a chance to be around Drew, and he's as good a person as you'll ever see. Would just love to know, just kind of as someone who was around that team. And I think you were there when, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think you were there when Drew was there, Drew Tranquil. Like, what you can tell us about your experience with him at Notre Dame.
Alohi too, right? Alohi
and Alohi Gilman too. Yeah.
Oh, Gilman for sure, man. I mean, those are a couple salt of the earth guys. And I want to start with Drew Tranquil because he was a heart and soul. He was a heartbeat of the team when he was there. And it was offense, defense, coaching staff. Like, people would come to Drew to get a sense of the heartbeat of the team. And even since he's left the program, he still represents a little bit of that. Like, when we were going through the coaching search and Brian Kelly left, I mean, he was one of the first people that they were referring to, right? And he's got a good relationship with Coach Freeman, who's the new head coach coming in. So he's just one of those guys. And even when he, tore his ACL on the celebration, it was a second knee injury and it was as low as it could have been. And everyone's going, and that's it. And you're not going to see him, probably play football again, at least not play football at that level with that many substantial injuries to that knee. And he just battled right back, and he's right back on the field. Now he's a position change. He's putting on weight, and he's flying around at linebacker. He's one of my favorite NFL players to watch, just because I know how hard it's been for him to be in this position. To continue to evolve himself and his game to be at the highest level is what I admire most about Drew. And ask some of his teammates about him. He's about as good of a teammate as you'll find.
Yeah, and he's been exceptional this year, no doubt about it. He is like that when he got inserted and it was him and Kaiser White, man, that really changed this defense, specifically the run defense. He's so smart, he's so fast, he's athletic, man. I don't know if there's a better I truly don't believe there's a better player at timing up blitz. Like, it is uncanny where he is the moment that ball is snapped when he's coming on a blitz. It's crazy to watch.
Yeah. Well, it's the evolution of that position, right? Because it's no longer about, can you have a 6'3", 260-pound linebacker that can run stuff. It's, can you fly sideline to sideline? Can you cover? Can you blitz and get there? Like you're saying, and I think he's a combination of being that new age linebacker with athleticism and speed, but he's super smart. And safeties a lot of times are lining up the coverages and getting everybody in position. And he's taken that knowledge to the linebacker spot. And it's a scary combination.
Yeah. And he's going to be a big piece to this defense, hopefully Sunday. He did not play against the Broncos. I think he was a limited participant earlier in the week. So that's certainly something to watch as we get closer to Sunday. Jack, you're the man. Really appreciate your time and can't wait to see you on the field Sunday night.
Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate it. Maybe get a cup of coffee or a drink one day out there in LA around the Super Bowl. Appreciate it, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jack.
All right, Money. I always ask you at the end of the podcast your keys to the game. What's your key to the Chargers getting to the postseason?
I'm just going to take my key on a cue from Joey Bosa. You know, he gets shook. Derek Carr does. He does not like getting hit. And that offensive line has been leaky all year. They've been trying to find a place for Alex Leatherwood, and he's the Waldo. Find him, go get him. And I will not be surprised in the least if Joey is moving all over that defensive line. We've seen how much better this team is with Justin Jones on the D-line. You got Linval Joseph, and just that rotation at end with Chris Rumph and Chenna and Fackrell to have that back, not to mention Derwin coming flying off the edge 3-4 times a game. To me, that's it. If you can get to Carr, I'm in the Joey Bosa camp on this one. I know that he's got, we talked about it repeatedly with all our guests. He's got these 29 fourth quarter wins if you let him hang around, but he's just, something happens to him. And I think that's the key. You got to get to him by any means necessary. I feel like the secondary played their best game that we've seen all season long last week. I know it was Drew Lock and a banged up Broncos team, but I've got faith that the secondary, as long as they stay whole, they're going to be able to hold up, for that extra beat to allow those pass rushers to get to them. So to me, I think the offense is going to score points. I have confidence in the offense against this Raiders D, even though they've, put up really good numbers these last 3 weeks. Chargers they're a different deal than a banged up Browns team, a Drew Lock led Broncos team, and a Colts team that really has not thrown the ball that well this year at all. It's been great defense, takeaways, Jonathan Taylor, very one-dimensional offense for the most part. That's not the Chargers. So I feel like the offense is going to get theirs. Defense, get after that ass. That's what it is. And that wins this game.
I'm not worried about the Chargers offense either. This is a game the defense is going to have to win them. And you said get after Carr, but also we saw the problems they had third down defense really all year, and then stopping the run. They remedied that last week against Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. They got after Drew Lock, and they were good on third down. If they can kind of carry that over into Vegas, you're packing that Justin Herbert-led offense and a special teams that's clicking right now with Andre Roberts getting them good field position. Yeah. If the defense shows up, Money, I think they're going to the postseason, man.
100%. I'm with you.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. I think Money alluded to this at the beginning. I think we're going to see some powder blue at Allegiant Stadium. So if you are there, come say hey to us. Big one on Sunday night for Matt Money Smith. I'm Chris Hayre.